Hey team lead here again, and today I bring you a very small piece of code which was asked to me to do on an actual technical interview quite recently, so I just want to share it with you guys to show what kind of train of thought I had and how can you proceed to do things in the same way. So let's jump right in. So I was asked to use a string and to find all of the characters inside. If we have hello world and we have, for example, two L's here, we want to see that the character called L has an occurrence times 2 in this world, but in this string we have hello LL and we have world another L, so total occurrence count should be 3. So how can one approach such an idea? Since I'm a C-sharper by design, so to speak, so I thought why not use things already built in C# like lists and specific classes. Let's jump right in. The signature is quite simple, so it's private static. Private because, well, it can be public in this case since it's a demo application, but I did private to use here. Static because our main application is static as well, so we're not breaking anything or making super huge changes here. We're just using things to work quite simply. And list. Now, two things here. You can ask why the hell did I choose the list? Because it belongs to system collections.generic and it has quite few things I need. It has ability to add something, we can do binary search, we can find less, we can check index and all that jazz. So for me, I think this collection type is useful and it's quite simple, and since I didn't receive any business logic to do anything else, and we'll talk about that after I'll show you the algorithm. And yeah, so I'm using this and I chose to add a class of specific things just to make it more beautiful. Instead of using anonymous types and something like that, I just chose to use something known to make more sense and to look more beautiful, to add that, let's call it object-oriented approach. We have a char called char and we have int called count, so this way we'll know what kind of char occurred how many times. Now on to the very simple algorithm and how can you solve very simple problems quite so. How can we approach this? Obviously, since a string essentially is an array of characters, right? We as people, we see string, we see as text, but for computer it's kinda each and every character is like an element. So for example, if you had an array of integers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's kind of the same way. So you have an integers, for example, like H, E, L, L, O. So there are those and they make up this array, and after that array can be made into human specific thing which we call string, right? So since we know that, we have an idea that we'll have to go through it, right? We can go linear, we can go backwards, we can, if this jagged array, we can have some different type of abilities, but for this, I think to run at least once is great. So how can we do? Obviously, we call and make 1 for just to go from left to right. And how we do it? We approach and we check. The first I'll check, so I'll come back to this if later. For us, the idea here is quite simple. We enter the array of things and we check if that already exists. So if I were to illustrate this in Paint, it's actually quite simple idea. Imagine you have this array of things, right? Let's draw it as blocks. And the idea is quite simple. Since we are entering it linearly in the sense that we are here, so we meet a character, for example, H, right? And we have, okay, so we are at our 0th position, so it's here, and we have a character H. So how can we see if there are more characters such as this? What I would do, I would make another loop going through here the same way, which starts at the exactly same position, and it goes and checks if there are something named like this as well. What it does, on the first H entry we make another loop, so this loop would be, let's call it I, and this loop will be called J. We go to I, we select something, and then we're going to J, and we see if there is another H. So for example, in this drawn example, the J loop would go and find, okay, so there was one J here and there was another J here. So our total count this way would be 2, right? We found 2 things, and after that the I would move to the right in one incrementation, and for example it can be I, and here can be like O, and it works the same way. It goes to this I, to this specific I, right? We select this and we want to find how many there are. So for J loop we start from the left, we see, okay, so H doesn't work, so I works for us, that's 1. Is there another I here? No. Is there another I here? No. This way we end our second loop. So second loop is to go into the same places and looking for the duplicates essentially, and the first loop is to complete to run as such. So now, since I showed you this example, it's quite easy to understand why we're doing the way we're doing here. Our second loop basically just checks if the item from position which it is, so for example the first position was 0, if there are any other positions that has the same characters. If we do, we just increment our counter and we add that to list, and that list at everything is completed, it gets returned. The only part I'm added is here. This is a little bit of business logic, meaning that if we find duplicates, we don't want to add another entry into list saying, for example, L count 2 and L count 2, because that would happen without this. So we say if we already have that character in our linear list, you shouldn't do that again. The idea is, remember in Paint we said it's like HI host, but in this specific Hello World example we find one L, right, and we go and find another one, another and another, right? So we find fill else. So I would say if you go to the second L, you shouldn't go with the second loop through HL and go just to find the same amount of else. So I would say if you find the same character which you already have a count, just skip that, and this way we save those few precious runs. And that's pretty much it. This is very simple and quick example of how you can find how many characters in a string there are. Now, if you're one of those guys who enjoy upgrading things, you can ask, can you do it differently? Yes, obviously, we're using foreign approach. We can use, for example, a thing called hash tables. We could input all of the things in, by running it once, and then we can check by character and see, the occurrences like that. So we could do it that way. But since we don't have any different business logic which says how strong or fast or performant or whatever our algorithm should be, I would say such simple and silly algorithm works real well, right? It has a few updates, just not to do things second time. And if you would want to upgrade it, there's no problem. You can definitely upgrade this algorithm and use different type structure, because lists are great for one thing, hash table are better for others. So if you want to avoid the second loop, I would go for hashes. But if you don't need that performance as such, just you wanted to show the proof of concept that it works, this way is fine as well, right? Thank you for watching, guys. If it's not too hard to ask, try to hit that like button and definitely sub. It will help the algorithm to show other people such things as well. Until next time, cheers guys.